Hello and welcome to this latest episode on Write for Your Life. I'm joined by Donna Sorensen, who is from the Irish Writers' Centre in Dublin, or was, she'll tell you about that in a second, and we're going to be talking about what it feels like to be published for the first time. And Donna's here to talk about that because she has just been published for the first time, which is quite exciting. So welcome, Donna.
Hello.
Hello. All right.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Ian. That was my little victory.
Your victory for getting published. Well,
Yeah,
that's probably the end of the podcast. That's just what it feels like to be published for the first time. Just do a
it sums it
victory
all up.
dance. So, okay, if you just take us through your journey from, because you only started writing a year ago, didn't you? As in properly trying to think, right, I'm going to be a writer who tries to get published and do that kind of thing. That only started for you about a year ago.
Yeah, definitely. Well, actually, I write poetry, and it was really just a year ago that I started writing poetry. Before that, I had an inkling, obviously, inside that I wanted to write something and that I had it in me, but I was trying different things, and I was experimenting with children's fiction. I thought that was where I wanted to be. So I wrote a few picture book stories, and I sent them out to publishers, just got rejected by everybody, and I just was very demoralized. That was right when I was starting out, and I decided to take a break from it. I was teaching then as well. So I just took a complete break and a change of career, and I managed to get myself working at the Irish Writers' Centre. And it was just absolutely inspirational for me to be there. I was setting up creative writing courses for people, and had writers around me, and I just had access to more types of writing and people who were on the process, because to me, I'd always thought, well, if I was ever to get published, then I will be a writer, and I'll say I'm a writer or I'm a poet, and I'll feel like it. But the last year has really taught me that it's kind of, well, it's not endless. I mean, you look at people who are massively prolific, been published for the last 20 years or whatever. I'm sure that they have no qualms about who they are. But for most people, it is a very, very difficult struggle, and it's something that you have to get used to.
Well, it is, and I think that's the important thing, isn't it? And I'm sure in a second we're going to talk about how good it feels to be published for the first time. But the truth of the matter is, almost everyone has to go through a period of feeling fairly rubbish, and anyone who goes through their writing career and doesn't get rejections and doesn't feel completely underconfident or like it's the last thing that they should be doing with their lives. It's unusual to not feel like that, really. To be at a point now where you are published must feel pretty good.
Absolutely. And I was sitting there, I don't want to sound too pleased with myself, but I did think, it's kind of this idea that if you don't experience the downtimes and the struggle and the negativity, will you ever fully appreciate the positive times and the successes you have in life? And I was thinking, I don't think I would. And, you have to get the confidence to be able to say, okay, writing is about trying different things. It's about getting yourself out there. It's about putting yourself in people's line of sight. And sometimes people are going to look at your writing and they're going to think that is exactly for me. Sometimes it's not going to be quite to their taste. It's this is not even talking about whether your writing is good enough to be published. You've got to remember that a lot of it is about the taste of editors and particular times and all these kind of things, You've got to take all that into consideration.
Yeah, no, this is true. And I mean, from my experience, I've had bits and pieces published, and I think most people who are watching this, who follow the blog, know that I've now got an agent for my novel and have had for a while. So obviously
Another victory
do my own
dance.
victory dance. But I remember, I mean, the first thing I got published was a few years ago, and because I did the MA writing course at Sheffield Hallam University in the UK, and the first thing I published was a short story, and it was published in the university's sort of literary journal, and which is a journal of repute. It wasn't a minor thing to be published in, but at the same time, it felt, well, it's the university's, and it's been chosen by people who kind of know who I am anyway, and it's only for people who are on the MA. And then some guest authors. So it felt fantastic. I mean, it felt absolutely brilliant. That validation that you talked about, it was your peers saying to you, your writing is good. But the time when I really felt like it was just like I was going to explode with joy was I entered a national competition, and which is called New Ventures, which is run by the Writers' Centre in Norwich, again in the UK. And
Oh yeah.
I didn't win. I'm still furious about it, but no, I'm not really. But
Massive oversight on their part.
it was a massive oversight. But I got a commendation, so I don't know. I guess I was fifth or something like that. And it just felt that when it's on sort of slightly national level, when it just feels like something that's slightly, it's just got that sort of level of importance to it, that level of recognition where someone who knows what they're on with actually says, this is good quality writing. And you, well, tell us how many you've had, 2 or 3 poems published in the last couple of months, or accepted.
It's 4 actually, very
4.
excitingly. But I experienced the same thing. One of my poems was published in an online journal, and I remember telling someone about it and saying, "Oh, I'm really excited. I got this poem published here." And this person was a writer and a journalist. I remember them saying to me, "Oh, that's great. That journal is rubbish, by the way. They take everybody that sends them work." That was what they said to me. And I was like, great, okay. So I kind of went home, rocked myself.
And that was the first thing that that was the first poem that got published?
Well, I mean, with poetry, it's very, very complicated because it wasn't the first poem that I got accepted for publication. But it happened to be the first one that actually came out. So I felt that it was quite representative of me, my first poem for people to actually see in the public sphere. But yeah, I'd had a poem accepted before that, but that was accepted last July. It's only coming out for publication in spring, and it's in a very, very good literary journal here in Ireland, but it's amazing how long it takes and how much work you have to put in to actually be submitting all the time, having things ready, shuffling things around, reading what's out there, finding out what editors like. Writing is just one part of it. Then there's that,
Well, absolutely, and I guess those kinds of things will influence your expectations. I mean, you've only been writing a year, so it's not very long at all. Writing poetry a year. But what were your expectations? I have this thing about where writers should. And it sounds really twee, I know that, but the idea that you should reach for the stars, that you should. There's no reason why, if you have the talent and the belief and the confidence, there's no reason why you can't be a published writer. If you've got the talent and the will to work, then go for it. Don't hold back. But at the same time, expect nothing. Don't expect to get published. Don't expect it to be easy, all that kind of thing. So how did you sort of manage that coming into it for the first time?
I found it really difficult. This whole idea about you need to get published before you actually can feel inside like you're a writer, I think is a really, really important step in the whole process. And as I said, I got my first poem accepted in a good publication that was July. And after that, I was like, right, I've got to use this time now with this positivity here to get as much writing as I can and to actually submit to the best journals I possibly can. Because, if you don't go for it, there's a lot to be said for tenacity, right? If you don't go for the best ones, you're not going to get into the best ones. And I spoke to people I know who are also really great poets. They're writing a lot. And they said, I haven't submitted to, this publication or this one just because, I just don't think I'm going to get in. It's all kind of come together this week where I've had a poem accepted in what many people consider to be the absolute best poetry journal here in Ireland. And it took them 6 months with my poems. I submitted them 6 months ago. I didn't hear anything for 6 months. You have to commit everything. You have to say, I'm going to give these to them and I'm going to let them, do what they want with them for 6 months and take myself out of all the other possibilities for those poems. But you've really just got to go for it.
Yeah, and I think that is one thing to expect, is to not expect it to happen quickly, whatever happens.
Oh God, no!
If you're sort of expecting to get that fantastic feeling of getting something published happening right away, it pretty much won't. Okay, so the last thing that just quickly touch on before we say goodbye is it's a kind of a what now. There's that kind of feeling of elation of having published first thing, no matter what sort of level of I don't know, sort of reputation the place it's been published in is. After that initial elation, it's very important to keep your feet on the ground, I would imagine. Is that what you're sort of struggling with now? Are you feeling like you just want to sort of go berserk with happiness, or are you trying to keep things on the lowdown, to quote a rapper of some sort?
I think I'm a lot more realistic now than I was when I first started out, and when I used to sit in front of the computer every day and be like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to hear anything about my poems today. You really move on from that very quickly. And I I'm really, really happy about all of my publications, but at the same time, I have poems out to magazines on submission at the moment, and I know that at any moment I could be rejected. I can tell you that I counted it up actually. In the last year, I've had 11 responses. I've submitted to lots of magazines, but I've heard back from 11 literary publications, and 4 have been accepted, and the other 7 have been rejected. And at the start, I would have thought, oh my God, that's horrific. That's like just a little bit better than like 1 in 3 or whatever. But actually, I think that's what it's like. And that is what you have to get used to. You have this constant balance between, the goods and the bads and the ups and the downs. And you've got to make sure that you can keep writing throughout it and have your own kind of conviction about who you are and what you're doing. And the most important thing I would say is that to not worry excessively about whether or not you are good enough to write, because that is at the start what really, really crippled me. I think was just I was constantly saying to myself, "My God, I'm just not good enough." That's all.
Yeah, well, that's
I think more complicated than that.
I think that's a very common writer's problem, isn't it? Okay, I think we'll end it there. What we're basically saying is it's fantastic. It feels great to be published for the first time, but there's nothing quite like the next rejection letter to get your feet firmly back on the ground.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You just got to keep battering the doors down, as they say.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we'll leave it there then. Thanks very much, Donna, for joining us for this episode on writeforyourlife.net. I will put a link to your poem, because one's just been published online, hasn't it?
Yes,
right?
Yep, it has, yeah.
Okay, so I'll put a link to that on the in the article below.
That'd be lovely.
All right, okay.
Thanks ever so much.
Okay, see you soon. Bye.
See you, bye.